Okie dokie. This is current status report number 8. Okay, and compared to the last one, this one is going to be a little less structured and it's going to be a little more free floating. So far, after the last major update, which was after I just watched it, it was a lot of it was on the technical side of the work, like grabbing footage, editing that footage, dealing with the Twitch apocalypse. And stuff like that, and a lot on writing. But for the initial month of 2026 and a little bit of February, I have done virtually no work in regards to in terms of the game content, and I don't think I have written anything in the last month. So on the technical side of things, the only thing that I did was finish um, the Eureka storyline and find out what ultimately happened with Kryl. The problem, comparatively to the the problem of the Baldesion Arsenal compared to normal content, because this is more considered like savage or extreme content. That is a very specific type of content where you need to actually listen to shot calls and stuff instead of just like moping around on your own, which is still possible on something like Borgia content. It just takes you a really, really long time. The problem is that this content is gated around like a very hard content, which thankfully, as you can see, is still being run. Right. So yeah, so that was the only technical fear of this quest line that I needed to capture the footage of for the Final Fantasy 14 video of ultimately capturing what happened to Cryoblade Essien during and his grandfather during the Stormblood storyline. But other than that, uh, for the miscellaneous content that I wanted to do, like the yellow quests and the lookout points that contain the lore in Final Fantasy 14, I have not done any of that because it's just a lot of like nuanced categorizing. Like I need to place the quests in specific categories and catalog them based on their lore and on their locations and setting and stuff. So I still haven't done that, and that's the only thing pertaining to the content of Final Fantasy 14. But yeah, other than that, I haven't done anything else, and I have not written anything else. Right? Okay. And the in terms of the philosophical progression, then these the last thing I was talking about last was Keiji Nishitani, and this has turned out to be quite the wonderful book, especially with the journey I was on, because it culminated into a lot of things. It's probably one of the uh, hard, yeah, it's probably one of the hardest books I have read philosophically because you needed to have a good foundation of the continental history. And additionally, you needed both sides of the theology in the Eastern religion. You don't really, I guess, I don't really hear a lot of people calling it theology, but basically, you needed the religious philosophy side of both sides of the coast, both the west side and the east side. And my west side was certainly very weak compared to my east side. And Nishitani has also revealed a lot of the things about Eastern Buddhist philosophy that I did not know about. It's just overall a really good book, and he really does a good job of culminating the nihilistic and existential side of the philosophy and brings it out in full. I think one of the fun aspects was listening to the Ivory. I like to go. This is just like I call it for fun, not really Ivory Tower, but the Nishitani workshops that are happening. Just so we can. Give me a second here as I find the right one. on something like this because the official university is actually releasing these
So, würde
videos.
ich sagen.
Videos. Yeah, it's just stuff like this. So from because these are a collection of, as you can see from the side, a collection of academics who are giving their sort of dissertation or workshops on the philosopher at large. I fundamentally don't really talk about a religion nothingness, but that which is kind of a shame. But I did learn a lot from like all across the globe because a lot of people gathered together for the workshop to talk about Nishitani. But of course, when I saw in Nishitani's sort of his the works he made. When I saw the self overcoming of nihilism, of course I had to get it. But this book is more on the what Nishitani saw because it's a series of lectures on what he saw was happening in the continental side of nihilism and existentialism. Right? And it also led to a deeper understanding of because different regions in the world have a different historical, social, and cultural context. So the way they receive their philosophy within that context is different. Like, for example, the reputation of Nietzsche originally in Europe, and then when the analytical kind of continental philosophy split, and then what Kaufman tried to bring Nietzsche back. So Kaufman has a very Anglo American view of Friedrich Nietzsche. Well, Friedrich Nietzsche actually in continental philosophy is fundamentally viewed through postmodernism, and uh, Nietzsche in the Japan, because in Japan he didn't need that sanitization that Kaufman was doing by saying, "Oh yeah, Nietzsche wasn't a Nazi like that." The Japanese people didn't need to do that, so Nietzsche was received in the East very differently. And all of this is sort of just give an example of sort of what uh, the ideas of what I've been learning. So, of course, in that vein, so Japanese nihilism and existentialism arises in a very specific way, and it's very interesting to have that context in parallel with all the other things that were happening. So, in terms of regional philosophy on different types of existentialism and nihilism, meaning, value, and purpose of what we're working on. Of course, that leads us to Fyodor Dostoevsky, which is the historical, cultural, social context of what was happening in Russia and why Dostoevsky's books turned out like they do. So these are the books I read so far. And I think what's interesting is that a lot of his books reminds me of Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver or The Kings of Comedy, and for the modern audiences, which is like Joker, which is that sense of it's only specific in this specific context. It's like male alienation, like specifically what happens in that context. And of course, when I say that in the Russian context, because it was a very specific 18th, 19th century problematic for their society of exactly what happened to them. So it's not exactly like a one-to-one of like the taxi drivers or Joker and stuff like that. But in a large part, it really does feel like that, which is that sense of like alienation. And contrary to where everybody just calls him, oh yeah, Dostoevsky is a really depressing reader. It's like that's sort of shallow viewpoint. Like that's not really Dostoevsky at all. I think the reason why, even as a religious writer, he still succeeds as one of the best writers of all time is because he never presents a stupid view. Like he understands the political tension that was happening between the younger generation and the older generation. He understood how the older and younger generation thinks, and he never just kind of like stupidly opt for like, oh yeah, just believe in God. Like he didn't have like that sort of like stupid argument, right? And of course, currently this is his magnum opus, which I'm working through. Hopefully, I will be done by the time of my vacation. And of course, more Nietzsche. I At this point, I'm at the point of just biting the bullet. It was like, initially, I started this journey by reading Friedrich Nietzsche. I understand now that was a terrible decision. But at this point of my journey, Nietzsche has sort of been my constant companion, even though I don't quite like him in some context. He has sort of become the constant companion of my quest in this making video essays on existentialism. So, yeah. I'm sort of just biting the bullet and sort of just reading ultimately all of his works, which by now is like almost up to 9 to 10 works. I still have to read this part, but I did finish the genealogy of morals. So okay, so that's what's happening with the on the study side of things. Okay, okay, and at uh, at the end of the last status report, I mentioned something about learning digital, like a video editing software, and of course, I landed on DaVinci Resolve. Right? I initially didn't know what I was getting into. Like always, I always never know what I'm getting into. But DaVinci Resolve really, if we want to be real for a second, it is not one piece of software. It's not just a video editing software. In reality, it's actually more like four different softwares that has been fused into one. And let me just get out of the way here. Right. And because this is a software, the entire edit page is a software, the entire fusion page is a software, the entire color page is an entire software, and the entire Fairlight page is an entire software. And what I literally mean that in the sense that all these like softwares like have their own logic that you need to go through and learn. And the reason I was hovering over the manual was because you might have noticed something. This manual is 4,000 pages long. Just to sort of give you the idea of what you have to learn. So far, I have gone through the edit page, which is frankly, aside for some confusing aspects of like how the UI functions and how the program functions, uh, I think like on an amateur level, I understand that page pretty well now. Right. And now I'm working on, and unfortunately, I didn't get to finish before I have to go on my trip, was the color page. Because the color page, if you can see here, the color page is very intimidating, especially because it has all these dials and knobs and volume and like meters and scroll wheels and all these menus and sub menus that you have to learn and all these like primary palettes, secondary palettes, and editing in HDR and like just stuff like that. It's just a lot of things you need to learn in here. And sort of I think because I'm reading philosophy, I've come to appreciate especially the intricacies of the color page because it really shows you about the dependency of the primary principles in color theory, with digital color theory, which is hue, saturation, and luminance. And how when you're moving a value around, you aren't just moving with that one value. There's always a relationship between the other values that are around, which is this is the simplest way to denote the non-linear mathematics that is happening in a digital color theory. Because instead of the linear math of like 1 + 1 = 2, it's more like 1 minus blue equals green. that's basically that's basically sort of like what I'm dealing with here. And like it takes you a while to like reformat your brain, and then like this really starts to affect the way you see things in real life, of like it's like, oh, that's a highlight, that's a that's a midtone, and then that's like those are the shadows, and then you can see some textures in the shadows, and the color is never really just the color. It's actually just an assortment of actually different colors that we call one color. And sort of that's what I've been doing. So I guess this is the way to say it. It's just like there's still a lot of work before we actually getting we get into the sort of the production stage of the video of that I said I was going to make, which ironically I have reviewed twice at the beginning of January of 2026, but I have done zero things towards that end. And as I entered into the the end of January, because of the difficulty of Keiji Nishitani's philosophy and sort of the reformatting I had to do in terms of digital color theory, right? Okay, so that's where I am at so far. Not a lot of work done on FF14, sadly to say, but a lot of learning that has had been happening, right? And the reason why I'm making this is because after about 5 years since I quit streaming entertainment, let's just put it that way, I am going on a trip to visit my parents back in Taiwan. So what that means is I will be gone from February 9th. I might stream tomorrow, I might not, but that doesn't really matter. From February 9th to February 19th. So the earliest I will be back is February 20th, right? And this is just to give you guys an update on what's happening. So for the next 2 weeks, you're not just wondering what happened to the guy. As always, just sitting there making myriad stressed, sad, and intense expressions at the screen, doing absolutely nothing. So, yep, that's it for this update.